So I started thinking about, well, is it possible to design a piano which is kind of more technically perfect? Which is kind of a bit ludicrous. It's a bit arrogant as well, maybe, because obviously a piano is an instrument that has been developed over kind of 200 years. And but anyway, I kind of carried on with that chain of thought, and what you start to get is you know, very long strings at the bass end, which are maybe 7 meters long, and if you take each one of the strings out, give it its own frame and soundboard and action, you start to end up with this series of sound objects. Each one is like a monochord. It has three strings per note, which are all tuned the same, like a piano. And I made a series of speculative models out of bits of instrument, and they kind of suggested that the project might be a performing building, as opposed to a building for performance.
There's a giant speaker!
So each note is made up of the component parts of the piano. So it has a steel frame, a soundboard, the action, which is actually out of just an old piano, a set of strings, a bridge to connect the strings to the soundboard, and then a pin block, tuning pins to allow you to tune the note. And then, you know, I've remade all of these pieces into my own sound object and given it an electronic actuator. The whole thing is it's modelled on computer, including the frame and the soundboard, and then I cut it virtually, flattened it, and then added in like bits of drawing for the plier stitches to allow me to then cut it out. So each one of the sound objects has a solenoid on it, which is the actuator for the action, and then that's plugged into a switching circuit. And then the way that I have it set up here at the moment is I have a little webcam almost vertically above the entrance, and then when you run the program is looking for movement differencing, and as it sees more than a certain amount of movement in one of the trigger zones, it'll start to play the instrument. So you get this sight and time specific score generated by the audience coming to and from the show. Pieces get tuned to the physical dimension of a particular space. So you can measure, in a rectangular room, you can measure 3 principal dimensions and work out the wavelength and therefore the particular frequency that note should play. When I knew that I was going to be installing the piece in this location, I figured out that there was probably about 3 ways in which I could install it and tune to this space. One of the ways is just to pick one of the primary dimensions and then derive a scale from that. The other way I thought of is that there's actually 12 steps from here to the half landing. So you could take dimensions from the step to the ceiling and make a scale that way. Or you could do what I've actually done, which is to take, accept that it's a kind of complex space, and take a series of different dimensions and then tune according to those dimensions. So each one of the notes has been matched specifically to that dimension. So for example, the one behind you, which is in the window, is playing the width dimension of the window. This one, which is related to a primary dimension of that space. So I have a good friend who's a saxophonist. As she first started to interact with the piece, she just started by kind of playing single notes and learning what input gave what response, and what different types of playing would provoke different reactions according to the kind of current programming that I've done. So the things that I think that I would like to do are, first of all, to get some professional musicians involved. Then there's a possibility of getting dancers involved, so to start composing the piece through movement. I'd like to make the next version of the prototype, so use all of the things that I've learned through making this prototype and apply that, experiment with new soundboard materials, make the tuning more accurate, increase the sustain, and then there's a kind of, the dream is to make the whole 88 note instrument, you know, the whole thing. And you know, there's a possibility of having a combination of dancers and musicians interacting with the piece, which I just think could be totally magical.